What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. My name is Chris, and I'm joined by two of the titans in this industry, Jurg and Dame. Fellas, how are we this week?
Pretty good, pretty good. I'm excited. We have a big episode today. I'm not going to spoil anything because that goes to the role of our fearless leader, who we are very glad is back, by the way. I missed you last week, Chris. I'm happy you're back, brother.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. I'm glad some people missed me
Yeah,
this
that makes
podcast.
one of us
Yeah, I
because
knew it.
I could care less. But
I know.
here I am on a Thursday where the Bears and Commanders play in prime time. I'll be getting an early night sleep today. I'll tell you that much.
That's true because also the Yankees game got delayed tonight. But that
Postponed,
means
not delayed.
whatever.
Get
But
your terminology right.
the point is, less stress for you tonight. Less stress. So I guess you're gonna get decent sleep, Dame. But I wish you
Yep.
got shit sleep. It's all right. But anyway, yeah, this week I think we have a pretty decent schedule for this week. Jurg is in the finale of his NHL divisions preview, right? Jurg, it's the last one.
Yes.
Okay, and then we are going to do something different because the last few weeks we've been doing NFL recaps, the NFL week recaps. But for this one, for this week we decided to switch it up, and I have come up with a bunch of questions regarding some teams in the NFL. You know, certain teams and how they've done up until week 6. Fellas, does that sound good?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay. As always, Jurg, we start off with the best. So, finale of the NHL divisions preview. Talk to me. What do you got?
Oh, thank you, thank you. Just in time for the start of the season, guys. The NHL season started within the last week, started in Europe, and then the regular season really began a couple nights ago. I think most teams have already gotten one game in. So this is just in the neck of time to be able to talk about the final division here. That is the Central Division in the NHL, home of the defending Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche. But just like I've done throughout the entire division previews, I'm going to go from the bottom of last year's division up, and at the bottom of the Central, we had the Arizona Coyotes. I'm going to be honest with you, the most interesting thing about Arizona over the next, not even this season, 4 to 5 seasons, is the fact that they're playing in a college hockey arena. I'll answer any questions the boys might have about that after the show. But the Arizona Coyotes, because of a bunch of different issues that they had with their previous arena, they're going to be, and mainly not paying rent, they're going to be playing in a college arena the next couple of years. I don't have much to say about this team. They're rebuilding. They have a bunch of draft picks over the next couple of years, to say the very least. They have 8 second-round picks over the next 3 drafts. That should tell you everything you need to know. This team is in deep rebuilding, and it's just all about building something there in Arizona, literally with their new arena and figuratively with their hockey team. All I could say about them. Next up is the team that I've lamented over so many times. Yes, it is my team, the Chicago Blackhawks, where we haven't been kicked out the United Center. We probably never will be, hopefully, but this team, to say the least, is rebuilding. Similar thing to Arizona, a lot of draft picks, especially 4 first-round picks over the next couple of drafts for the Blackhawks. Likely going to add more with some of the trade pieces they have. Likely the final season that we'll see the pillars of the last 15 years of the organization in Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews on the ice for the Blackhawks. They'll probably get traded during the season. I highly doubt they'll let them leave after the season. I think they're both going to end up being traded. The true final nail in the coffin, end of an era, but in most recent years, errors by the Chicago Blackhawks with new head coach, new general manager from the end of last season. Everything is brand new in Chicago, and we'll see how that translates here eventually. Moving on to the bad teams, let's go to a team that has a little bit more hope, but at the same time, and that's the Winnipeg Jets, missing the playoffs last season. They haven't been the strongest in what they were in recent years, and a part of that is because of the culture. With this team, a lot of infighting, a lot of bad personalities, and some of the people with bad personalities in terms of defensive work ethic or just wanting to be there are still there. Yes, these guys are talented, such as Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler and Pierre-Luc Dubois, but I just see that there are some issues in this lineup. I'm not the biggest fan of the bottom 6 of this team. I think the defensive core is actually fine. It's not bad. There's a solid top 4 there, which is kind of all you need in this league. Now, with Connor Hellebuyck in net, anything can happen. Rick Bowness is known for getting a lot out of his goalies. He did that with Dallas the last couple of years. Maybe this could be a resurgence for Winnipeg. It actually wouldn't surprise me because everything looks like it could be, but I'm not holding out hope. I think we're slowly getting into a point where the Winnipeg Jets might be not where the Blackhawks and Coyotes are, which is full on tank mode, but rebuilding. I could see that happening here soon because there's some youth on this team, and the veterans that are there, I don't think their future is long for Winnipeg, to say the very least. Now to the actual good teams that really could make an impact this season. Nashville Predators made the playoffs last year, but their starting goalie, UC Saros, got hurt and wasn't able to start in the first round of the playoffs. Granted, would they have lost to the Colorado Avalanche eventually? Yes, But at the same time, the Avs are still a very talented team. Philip Forsberg, who got a nice new contract extension, still with the club, had an amazing year last year and 42 goals, and probably would have scored even more had it not been for an injury that only kept him out a couple of games. But he is joined on this team by still some very talented forwards in Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, who offense was up last year across the league, and those two guys in particular did a very good job. They really, I talked about resurgence for the Jets potentially. This was a resurgence for both those guys' careers. Career high, I think, for both players in terms of points last season, especially for Duchene, the first over 40 goal season of his career. This is a very, there's some offensive skill on this team. They added Nino Niederreiter in the offseason, which I think was an amazing depth move, but the strength is still going to be the defense with UC Saros being there. And alongside him, leading the defense, Roman Josi, a Norris Trophy candidate every single season. Ryan McDonough, who they got from the Tampa Bay Lightning, who had to have a cap dump. Very talented top four defenseman, two-time Stanley Cup winner now. Matthias Ekholm as well, and Dante Fabro. This Nashville team is very competitive. It would surprise me if they don't make the playoffs. They have all the makings of a team to A, make the playoffs, and B, have a pretty solid playoff run, but that really depends on seeding at the end of the day. If they face a top team like the Avs or Edmonton or Calgary, if they're a wild card team, I'm not too sure if they'll advance past, but they are a very competitive team to say the least. And I think for Nashville, that's kind of what they've been for a while. And the NHL, in some instances, that's not necessarily a bad thing either. A team that finished above the Predators last season, I'm not sure if I would tab them to finish above them this year, is the Dallas Stars. I will say Dallas finally did get everything in order in terms of contracts to the likes of Jake Ottinger and Jason Robertson. Those were two big contracts they had to get. Ottinger is the goalie of the future there. Jason Robertson, 41 goals last season, nearly 80 points. Those are two very talented guys there. Overall, there are some very talented guys on this team. A solid defensive team with the likes of Esa Lindell and Ryan Suter on this team, with Miro Heiskanen there, one of the top, I think, underrated defensemen in the league at this point. But my thing is, the coach of this team, Peter DeBoer, I'm not a big fan of him. He's very known for regular season success, but in the playoffs, he falters. He mainly relies on the talent of his team, and even then, talent can only get you so far. I'm not that big of a DeBoer fan. I think I shared my thoughts on this podcast when they made this coaching change, and I said, welcome to second round purgatory, Dallas, at best. So I'm not too high on the Stars this season, as well as you have guys in Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn who are trying to bounce back from major injuries the last couple years. I don't think it's looking great in Dallas. Maybe because of how wide open and weak the Pacific is, Dallas can still sneak in as a wild card team, which they did last season, but not looking great, honestly. Not looking great in my mind between the Dallas Stars for this upcoming 2022-2023 season. Last year's top three teams, let's get to it with these clubs. The St. Louis Blues, Stanley Cup champions just 3 years ago in 2019, and Jordan Binnington is kind of regained form, played a lot better last season, got his first playoff win in the playoffs last year, actually, which was his first playoff win since their cup victory back in 2019. Wild stat there. But Binnington in front of him is a solid defensive core of solid, like I said, but not elite defensemen in Justin Falk and Torrey Krug and Colton Parayko, and a veteran in Nick Leddy there. A very good forward core that's defensively inclined. You have the likes of Ryan O'Reilly, who's a Selke candidate, Vladimir Tarasenko, who's an 80-plus point, potential 30-40 goal scorer, Pavel Buchnevich, who had a career year. You have some very talented guys, including Thomas Roberts and Jordan Kyrou, who got twin 8-year, $65 million contract extensions this past offseason. This is a team of great talent. It's well coached, honestly, by Craig Berube. I think St. Louis is great. I just don't know. I think they're a team that, in my mind, you guys have probably experienced this in the other sports that we mainly cover here, boys. I feel there's something missing about the St. Louis Blues. I can't quite put my finger on it, I think, but there's just something about this team that's missing in my mind. That's not necessarily saying it's a bad thing. I think the Blues are talented. I think if Binnington can play like he did last season, I think all the talent is there for this team to succeed and eventually, maybe make it back past to at least the conference finals. Who knows? That's a wait and see approach right there. But the talent is once again there in St. Louis as we look to see what they can potentially do. It's been a couple years now since that Stanley Cup appearance. What can they do now? Let's see. It's been 3 full seasons since they won that cup. A lot of that core is still there. Is this maybe one of the last rides there? Who knows? To say the very least. A young team, relatively speaking, that could potentially go on a run because of the just natural star talent that they have is the Minnesota Wild. I got to give this team props. I've said it before on the podcast. This team is competing with a handicap $12.7 million of dead cap space this year and $14 million in the upcoming 2 seasons after this one. that is not easy to build a team with, yet they have somehow been able to do it. The Minnesota Wild, a strong defensive core on this team between the likes of Jared Spurgeon, Jonas Brodin, and Matt Dumba, a solid forward core all around, with some very talented young forwards who are looking to make more of an impact in the NHL this season, in the likes of Matthew Boldy and Marco Rossi, as well as some veterans there in Joel Eriksson Ek, who had a career high last year, and Matt Zuccarello, who's a great veteran. But the two keys to this team will be the potential MVP caliber performance we might see from Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov and the veteran Marc-Andre Fleury. I think their two performances are going to be the big indicator. If Kirill Kaprizov can continue to prove that he is that dude for this franchise and be a 100-point scorer plus like a 30, 40, maybe does he flirt with 50 goals this season? I think the Wild will have a great chance overall. Whereas Marc-Andre Fleury, the veteran, can still get it done. Not as strong last season than he was the previous year before that when he was the Vezina Trophy winner. But I think going from Chicago to Minnesota, there had to be a little bit of an adjustment there, especially the defensive systems that were in front of him, mainly in Chicago. It was so bad. He got to Minnesota. It's like, oh, this is what good defense looks like. I think there needs to be an adjustment. And now that he's the bona fide number one goalie there, I think it's a good thing for that organization. I think they're well coached. I think it's good management there. All in all, the Minnesota Wild, for the handicaps they have, they are a very talented team. They are a good team. Could they potentially make a run? They kind of got unlucky that they faced the Blues last year because those are two very similar teams. Minnesota is going to be competing this year very heavily. I expect them to be a second-round caliber team, and if they can go past that, that just really goes to show the strides this team would take. But every team in the Central Division has to look up to this squad because that number one boys in the Central Division from last year, and my personal prediction for who's going to win that division this year, it is the defending Stanley Cup champion, the Colorado Avalanche. Like any other Stanley Cup team, they're going to lose a couple of pieces, ultimately speaking. Andrei Burakovsky, Darcy Kemper, and Nazem Kadri all leaving this team. But the fact that they were able to maintain more pieces than I thought they would was actually the most interesting thing. Keeping Josh Manson and Valery Nichushkin, who both had great runs last season, well, especially Nichushkin overall for this team, a career high in points, 15 points in the playoffs then. Arturi Lehkonen, who stepped up with 14 points in the playoffs for the Colorado Avalanche. They paid their playoff performers. It's actually very rare that a team that makes trade deadline acquisitions keeps them the following season after guys. The fact that they were able to keep Manson and Lehkonen was a big deal. They kept Nichushkin, who was a big, I don't want to say gamble. He was a low risk, high reward signing. Man, they reaped the benefit of the rewards last year, and they might do that more this season. A full proper season with him and his newfound confidence. Valery Nichushkin could be a problem that many expected when he was a former first-round pick in this league years ago. Goaltending is probably the only weakness on this team, because they traded for now former Rangers backup Alexander Georgiev. But overall, in front of him it is an absurd defense, to say the very least. You have the likes of Devon Toews. You have a Bowen Byram, who's going to take that next step for them this season. You have Sam Girard, who, by the way, was injured in their Stanley Cup run last season. That's one of their top four defensemen, and he was out for all the playoffs. I'm just saying. And you have, forget just the potential Norris Trophy winner this season. You have the potential Hart Trophy winner this season in Cale Makar. Yes, he is that talented, a defenseman, being in the MVP conversation legit. And by the way, there is another guy on this team who could be an MVP candidate this season in Nathan MacKinnon, who signed a beautiful contract to make him the highest paid player in the league going forward in terms of yearly cap hit earlier in the offseason, well over a month back. This team is just stacked. They're still the best team in the Central. They're still arguably the best team in the West. They're my preseason pick to honestly make it out the Western Conference. It wouldn't surprise me if they have a chance to repeat like the Tampa Bay Lightning did here recently. Colorado's stacked. Colorado's talented. They won the Cup last year, which means they're the best team in the league. And coming into the season, they deserve that monarchy to potentially be the best team in the league and have legitimate or are legitimate favorites to win the Cup again and repeat once again. It would be fantastic, to say the least, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. Colorado Avalanche, most talented team in the Central Division, coming out, and expect them to likely win this division again. Who is going to join them from the Central and the West overall in the playoffs? And what's the playoff bracket going to be? We have a long season ahead of us, guys. 2022-2023 NHL season just started, and I'm excited and looking forward to it. And that brings us to the end of the full division previews for this upcoming season. It has begun, and hockey fans all around are just excited. Me, morbidly, because I'm a Blackhawk fan, I'm more so looking forward to the draft lottery. That's my Stanley Cup for the season. But aside from that, the season itself, I'm excited, and I can't wait for games have started, but I can't wait for the season to really properly get underway here, boys.
Beautiful job, as always, Jurg. Beautiful job, as always. All right, we move on over to the NFL world, where 5 weeks have passed. And, gentlemen, I have questions about certain teams, and I want to ask you about those teams. You guys ready?
Always.
Go ahead.
Nice. All right. Yeah, I will go ahead, Dame. Why don't you calm your face a little bit over there? Well, guys, I would say I don't know. I feel like last year's NFL season was way more exciting. Do you guys feel the same way? I feel like there's been some pretty bad
This season
duds.
sucks.
Yeah, to put it lightly. Yeah, yeah. I hear you, bro. I hear you. Um, but yeah, look, we're not gonna waste any time. I got questions. You guys may have answers. So, Jurg, I'll give you a breather here. I'm gonna start off with Dame. My first question: Are the Eagles the team to beat in the NFC?
And the NFC, absolutely. I mean, the NFC is like the Eastern Conference of a few years ago in the NBA. Um,
Mm.
the Rams are disappointing. The entire division there is all right. I mean, the Seahawks are a nice story. The Cardinals suck, and the Niners have Jimmy Garoppolo as their quarterback. So you got really nothing there. I guess the only argument you can make is the Bucks, but even the Bucks, Tom Brady, although he doesn't look bad. He just doesn't look the same quarterback he used to be. That's obvious. We all expected that. That offense just doesn't look as explosive as it used to be. I know they have a lot of injuries, but I mean these injuries aren't going to go away. Um, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Fournette, they're guys that always have had an injury history, so this isn't something that's just going to go away. And that's really the only team I'd put in competition with the Eagles for NFC right now. Obviously, a lot can change. We're only 5 weeks in, but as of right now, I just don't see a team that you can say has been more impressive than the Eagles on both sides of the ball, because it's not like it's just a fluke. It's not like they're barely winning games against bad teams. I mean, they're putting up a lot of points. Their defense is playing amazing. They're beating good teams as well. So I just see no competition for the Eagles. I think, although I don't see them competing with anybody in the AFC, as for just the NFC, I definitely see them as a favorite.
Yeah, I'm with Dame on this one. I've already said it. I severely underestimated the Eagles going into this season, and I've said it on the last couple weeks, and I'll say it again. I apologize, Philly. You don't have to be this good just to spite me. Nah, man, like Dame said, some of it has to do with other teams underperforming. The Rams have vastly underperformed this season. I think have way more issues than meets the eye than I think we were, and I'll admit, even myself, were giving credit to and looking at prior to the start of the season. Um, Dame kind of mentioned, I think the only other team worth noting is the 49ers from the NFC West. And even then, kind of the slow and consistent start because Jimmy G had to, not miss, but not play the first couple games. And even then, I still think there are significant weaknesses on the team. But the problem is they haven't faced a team necessarily to make them pay for that. The 49ers might take this division just because they have a relatively quote unquote, like, I don't want to say easy schedule, but it's not as challenging as the Rams, who were like they give the defending division winners and Super Bowl champion, etc., the hardest possible schedules usually. And the Rams are a flawed team who are looking at a tough schedule this year, to say the least. But looking at the other teams, like Dame said, the Buccaneers, yes, Brady's been good, but it's either his weapons are hurt, the offensive line is hurt, the defense is a little bit dinged up, and some possessions and days they're not performing great. And sometimes they need to get lucky and get a call in their way to definitively win a game. Like at the end of the day, the Buccaneers are fine, but they're not the overwhelming team they thought. They're not that much more overwhelming than the Packers, who, yes, they've been disappointing this season, but they're still above 500. I still think they're probably going to win the NFC North because I'm expecting the Vikings to Viking and Kirk Cousins to go Kirk Cousins. So I got to double check to see how many more primetime games to chalk up as losses for Minnesota. But irregardless, yeah, the Eagles, I think I said this last week and the week before. I think they should be the favorites to win the NFC right now, to be the number one seed by the end of the season. They deserve it. They have balled out this year.
Okay, Jurg, I'm gonna stick with you. We kind of already brought up this team. What is your concern? How concerned are you about the Rams? How concerned are you of the Rams?
On a scale of 1 to 5, or no, excuse me. Well, yeah, let's say 1 to 5. 5 being DEFCON scenario, and 1 being why are we bringing this up on the podcast? I'd say a solid 3. I still think talent can help you win games in sports overall. Um, if it's not, like, as long as there are proper circumstances. I don't think the Rams are a bad locker room, to say the least. I just think things are going against them right now in terms of the offensive line is underperforming. Matthew Stafford has reverted back to what he was in Detroit, which, look, I was happy for Stafford that he got his Super Bowl win last year and all that. But I kind of had the opinion when he was in Detroit, like, yes, he's fantastic. Yes, he's exciting. Yes, he's a gunslinger. He makes a lot of mistakes that I think sometimes can get protected here and there. I think he's supremely talented. I think he's still a top 10 caliber quarterback, but he hasn't played like that this season. I think the number one thing has been the offense. I know some people want to clown Jalen Ramsey and they want to say this, they want to say that. That's still one of the best corners in the game. There's still Aaron Donald and Bobby Wagner on the defense. Aside from week 1 against the Bills, the defense, for the most part, has done their job. Well, minus a half versus Atlanta. But the games they have dropped, aside from that Bills game, I think the offense should have stepped up and gotten those wins. I don't understand. Like, they need to be better. They completely, floundered against the 49ers. They floundered against the Cowboys, 2 very good defenses. That offense needs to step up, plain and simple. So I'm honest. If we're going like 1 to 5, it's a 3. If we're going like 1 to 10, it's like a 5 or a 6. Like, they have time, but they need to get their act together quickly, because the NFC right now, like, I know we talked about how it's kind of weak, but you still need to have a good first half of the year. And the Rams, like, you TikTok, like, let's get this together here.
I'm extremely concerned about the Rams. I won't go full blown a 5 or a 10 on those scales, but I'm pretty high up because I going, like you said, their schedule is extremely tough going forward. That's what you get for being first place team. We're seeing it with the Chiefs. The Chiefs' schedule is god awful. But for the Rams, I mean, nothing looks good on this team. Their quarterback doesn't look good. Their running back game doesn't look good. Their wide receivers outside of Cooper Kupp don't look good. Their defense doesn't look good. Nothing looks good on this team. That's why I'm extremely concerned. I just don't see how they could turn around. They've at least shown me no sparks in any game, to be honest. The only spark I'm seeing is Cooper Kupp, but like, I feel like that's the only guarantee that you're gonna get every single game. Everything else is a question mark. I mean, they're playing the Carolina Panthers this week. They should win, but I can't even guarantee they're gonna win because of how bad they've looked this season. It all starts with the quarterback, of course, but if the quarterback doesn't have a running game, if the quarterback doesn't have an offensive line, if the quarterback's defense is not keeping them in the game, and then he just has to throw it, and can't get the play action going, which obviously we've all mentioned, and we all know how the Rams' strength on their offense is their play action game. But you can't have a play action game when the opposing defense knows you're not going to run the ball because you're down 2 or 3 scores, So it all comes around in a circle. Like, it's not just one thing that's missing from them; it's an entire team. So that's why I'm extremely concerned because their schedule doesn't ease up. Of course, they have the Panthers, but then I think they have a bye, and then I think they play the Niners right out the bye. And we know how badly they play against the Niners. Even last year when they won the Super Bowl and they were playing pretty well, they still couldn't play against the Niners well. So I'm extremely concerned for them because nothing looks good, and their schedule just isn't going to ease up after the bye.
Dame, let me stick with you, buddy. How concerned are we for the Packers?
Not as concerned about the Rams because they have looked good at times. They've looked good in the Bucs game. They've looked good in parts of the Giants game and other parts of the season, but I don't know. They just couldn't finish out the Giants. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't think the Giants are that good of a team. I know their record is 4-1. It's gonna hurt Giants fans. They really take that to heart, but it is what it is. But I mean, it all starts at the wide receiver position. Like, obviously, you've had sparks with Romeo Doubs, Alan Lazard, and of course they have their running game. But if you just don't have that number one receiver, it's going to be hard for them to go forward anywhere. A lot of rumors are saying DJ Moore could be a candidate there. I think that would be absolutely amazing, giving Aaron Rodgers a young number one receiver that can make things happen in space. That's something the Packers need. But their defense has been all right. I'm not going to blame the defense, but it all comes down to I'm just going to blame the management as I've had the past few years as to why the Packers aren't good. That's the only thing that makes sense. Also, Aaron Rodgers, like, I wouldn't say he's been his MVP self these past few games either. So I think that hurts them. But it's not as concerned as the Rams because I have seen sparks and they are in the North, which is a lot easier division. But I'm still pretty concerned about them though.
Yeah, I don't blame you, Dame. I'm kind of on a similar level. And here's the thing. I didn't mention it with McVay and the Rams. You kind of did towards the end of your talk about them. I want to bring it up here with LaFleur. Why is it that these offensive-minded coaches go away from running the football so quickly? And I'm not talking about when, like, I understand Dame kind of talk about with the Rams, you get down, you can't run the ball as much. But the Packers and even the games when the games were closer for the Rams, they don't run the ball. And like, if the Packers had ran the ball more against the not the Niners, excuse me, the Giants, well, maybe the Niners last year, but against the Giants, they would have won that game in London. Now, am I petty because, on a different podcast there's a point system and the Packers screwed me over? Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, there is issues in the fact that these offensive-minded coaches who we praise for being innovative, who we praise for the great work they do with their quarterbacks and getting their receivers that next level production and all this stuff, why is it that they always go away from the running game? I don't understand the thought process there, especially with a two-back system like they have in Green Bay. Like, I get with LA, there's some injuries there, and San Francisco. I mean, Kyle Shanahan doesn't go away from it because, good Lord, I will say every single chance I get, Kyle Shanahan can scheme anybody for 50 yards on like 9 carries on that team. But the Packers have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. No reason, no conceivable thought as to why they went away from the running game when they were up 17-3 and why they didn't use that more. I didn't understand it. I know, like, look, I'm kind of with you, Dame. I want to give the Giants credit for what they've done so far, but also 4-1. They're kind of a fraudulent 4-1. The Packers choked, and the Bears are one of the teams that they beat. It's pretty easy to beat a team that doesn't have a quarterback, that's trying to win games without actually having a quarterback to throw the ball. So, like, the Giants, they just need to get things together. We've seen it in the Packers, my bad. The Packers need to get it together. They've showed in glimpses how good they are. They need to pull together, especially we've talked about this whole time. The Rams are looking weak. The Buccaneers aren't at their best right now. It's mainly just the Eagles. You could at least get the 2 seed, which would buy you home field advantage throughout at least the first 2 rounds, but they're not playing at that level. Like, you gotta step up if you're Green Bay here. Like, don't let this opportunity go away from you, because I'm not just talking about this season in and of itself. I'm talking about the fact that next season, like, the Aaron Rodgers window is closing here. Like, put performances together, do what you can to try to go after the Super Bowl. We've said this for years. The Packers just don't, like, it's almost like their biggest opponent is themselves. And what do you do to overcome yourself when you're like, I don't know. I can't answer that for Green Bay at this point. Like, I don't know. This team is just so confusing.
All right, Jurg, let me stick with you, buddy. Concern level for the Raiders. Where we at?
The Raiders, Jesus. I mean, you technically have to be higher than what we were with the Rams. Um, I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna give it a 4. Here's why I'm not going full 5. The Dolphins now don't have Tua for a bit. At least they shouldn't. I mean, who knows? They might play. They might play him next week, week 7. Um, they don't have Teddy this week, so that's Skylar Thompson. So that's the Dolphins out the way, guys. I respect the Jets. I love the fact that they're above 500. But at the same time, we know this is not the Jets season. We know this is not the Jaguar season. The Colts are underperforming as all hell, and the Denver Broncos are the Denver Broncos. More on them in a few moments. The Raiders still have a chance to make the playoffs here, but they need to kick it into a different gear here. Let's just be real. They're not going to beat the Chiefs the next game they have, whatever. But they have a chance to win a couple of these games. I think they could at least split with the almost the Dodgers. Jesus, the Chargers. I think they could beat the Broncos both times. I think they're winnable games. Yes, they made the playoffs last year, but I think they were second in the division. So kind of a tough schedule, but at the same time, not the toughest in the world. Like, the Raiders can still make the playoffs, but the margin for error is very thin. The margin for error is very thin. You have to clean stuff up. The offensive play calling needs to be better, especially down the stretch. That defense that showed up in key possessions against the Broncos the first time they faced, you got to step it up again, man. You got to step it up again. Like, that's plain and simple. You have to be able to do that. So at the end of the day, like, I'm going to put it at a 4. I think there's still a chance, but there are mitigating factors going against them. The biggest one being, like, I know it's just week 6, but next thing we know, guys, we're going to blink our eyes and it's going to go from week 6 to week 13. And it's like, oh, who's in a good spot for the playoffs here? The Raiders need to go on a massive run the next couple weeks. Can they do it? They kind of went on a run last season, not in terms of games in a row, but like they won 4 out of 5 or whatever it was to surprise us last season when we had low expectations. You're going to have to pull out some magic on this one too.
For the Raiders, I'm not too concerned because I just didn't have high expectations for them this season. I did think they were going to be better than they are. But obviously playing in that division and the fact that they just can't beat the Chiefs at any game, any place. I just didn't have that much expectations, but I did think this offense was going to be a lot better with the addition of Devontae Adams. Of course, they've had their injuries with Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow, but Josh Jacobs has been a lot better than many expected. A lot of people thought he was either going to get cut or traded. But here he is. You saw, I don't know, a lot of people watched the Kansas City game and saw how hard he was running and all those rushing yards he had and how he was a vital point of them even being in the game. Without him running the ball like that, I think it would have been a blowout. But I mean, their defense it's bad, but many expect it to be bad. No one expected it to be one of the best defense in the league or anything like that. But this offense is supposed to carry the team, and it's just not. At the end of the day, they're not winning games. You've seen a lot of games where they just struggle to move the ball up and down the field, and I think they beat the Broncos, right? But I mean, can't really say much if you beat the Broncos, you know. And of course they moved the ball against the Chiefs, but again, the Chiefs don't have that great of defense, and a lot of the offense was just throwing the ball up to Devontae Adams and hoping he draws a defensive pass interference. So at the end of the day, I'm just not that concerned because I just didn't have many expectations for them. I still think they're going to finish third in the division. It is what it is with them.
Dame, let me stick with you, pal. Are the Vikings trending upwards? Like, I know it's Kirk Cousins, but like 4-1's not a bad start, you know. And I think it's pretty clutch that they got that win over the Packers week 1. But what are your thoughts on that?
It's so hard for me to say that they're trending upwards because they're such an up and down team. One week they could be trending upwards, one week they could be trending downwards. Like it's so hard to tell because of Kirk Cousins. He's one quarterback in primetime games and another quarterback in 1 o'clock games. So really, at the end of the day, it might just depend on. I haven't looked at their schedule deeply, but it might just depend on how many day games they get, how many primetime games they get. But we've all talked about this. Like this team has all the weapons to be successful. You have Justin Jefferson, top 5 receiver in the league. Adam Thielen, who, if you put him against all the number 2s in the league, might be a top 5 number 2 wide receiver in the league. You have Dalvin Cook, who's a top 5 running back. Eric Smith at tight end. They're pretty good offensive line. Their defense has played better than many expected this year. Their coach has been really good this year as well. So this team has all the recipes to be successful. So it really all just comes down to Kirk Cousins. And you've seen how he played on that primetime game where it was god awful against the Eagles, but then you saw how he played against the Packers. And this week, I forgot who they played. Someone remind me. I forgot.
The
Whatever.
Bears?
Was it the Bears? Probably was the Bears. I
Yeah,
don't
they beat
know.
the Bears by a touchdown.
He played pretty well there. 1 o'clock game when no one's watching. It's so up and down with him. So I would say it is trending up because if they are 4-1, like that's a really good sign, especially in that division. You need to be able to keep the course with the Packers. I think they are ahead of the Packers, correct?
Yeah.
Packers
Yeah.
have 2 losses. Yeah. So I mean, at any point in the season that you're ahead of the Packers in that division, it's a good sign. But at the end of the day, it's like I really feel like I mention this every time we talk about the Vikings, but really just it comes down to Kirk Cousins and how well he plays. I hope this team does well. I hope Kirk Cousins like turns around, becomes more consistent. Doesn't matter what time the game is or anything like that. The moment never gets too big for him because this is an exciting team. When they get their running game going, when they start getting the ball to their playmakers, it is a fun offense to watch. They could put up 35 to 40 points every single night. And it really wouldn't matter how bad your defense is at that point. It'd be exciting, but it really just all comes down to him.
Yeah, on paper they should be like a really good team.
Oh,
Jurg, before you
absolutely.
go, I wanna tell you guys the games they have left. So they have the Dolphins this week, right? No Tua. After that they have the Cardinals. I believe Hopkins is done with his suspension because that'll be week 7, right?
Yeah, he
Mm-hmm.
should be.
Okay. After that, Commanders. After that, the Bills. Then Cowboys. Patriots. I think the Patriots game will be a primetime game because this is 8:20 here. Jets, Lions, Colts, Giants, Packers, Bears. So I think it could go either way the rest of their season. But what do you think, Jurg?
If the Minnesota Vikings play 1 o'clock games for the rest of the season, they'll win the division. If they play mainly 4 o'clock games, they'll make the playoffs. If they were forced to play as many primetime games as we've been force fed the Broncos this season, they're going to miss the playoffs by a long shot. It's hard to say. I look at what we've seen out of the Vikings as circumstantial because in one moment you defeat the Packers, who week 1, I think we all kind of predicted that they were going to have to put everything together in week 1. So we were, one person here in particular expected a loss. But then they get absolutely jettisoned, like just slaughtered by the Philadelphia Eagles. Then they have that, I'm not going to say shootout, but they have the close game against the Lions. They win by a missed field goal, double doink against the Saints. And then this game against the Bears, which they should have blown them out. That final score shouldn't indicate what it was. The Vikings were killing them early on, 21-3, and then the Bears come back, take a 22-21 lead, and then it takes a fourth quarter drive to get them to win. Like I don't like that. And I would say this about any team, so it's not just my slight Kirk Cousins bias showing, but I don't hate Kirk Cousins with the passion of 1,000 burning suns like I do the Titans and Ryan Tannehill. I more so just like the meme of Kirk Cousins. He just, I don't know. Like, the Vikings are just weird to me. If you had to give me a guess, like, are they trending upwards or downwards? Like, what's the definition? Can I still say downwards and still say they might make the playoffs? Because that's how it's looking to me. Like, I still think they're going to falter in a couple places. I still think they're going to end up losing a couple of these games. Um, so if I could still say that, I'll just say down.
How about this? How about this, Jurg?
Okay.
Okay, so next few games,
Yeah.
Dolphins,
Okay.
Cardinals, Commanders,
Dolphins, Cardinals,
and then
Commanders.
after that they have the Bills, right?
Yeah.
So they're 4-1. If they go into the Bills game 6-2, how do we feel?
We're feeling good because
Feeling good?
yeah, I think we're
I
feeling
didn't want
good.
to go 7-1 because I'm like I think the Cardinals may like take them, but like
Even then, they could lose one of the games we're expecting them to win, and they could
for
win one of the
sure.
games we're expecting. If they're
Yeah.
6-2 going into the Bills game, that's very good if you're Minnesota, because I think the Packers, even though they could technically be 6-2 by then, you still have the tiebreak. Like, the biggest thing, the most important game for the Vikings is the second game against the Packers. If you can win that game, massive,
Mm-hmm.
massive. It guarantees you at least home field advantage for the most part in the first round of the playoffs. So if you can get that second game against Green Bay, that's big time. I think that's what it's all about. So if you're telling me they're 6-2 going into the Bills game, yes, I could actually conceive that. I'll say they're trending upwards for now, but I still have questions about this defense. Ultimately, I still think that the weaknesses there. I think they've gotten lucky with some of the teams they're facing. I think once they get to face some of these teams with weapons, I know that'll just be game one back for DeAndre Hopkins. But if you're giving me one team in the NFC, I want to face game one for my top receiver coming back. Well, honestly, first team would be the Lions because God, they suck on defense, and the second team would actually be the Minnesota Vikings. Like, the young secondary, Hopkins might eat them alive in that game. He might go for like 150 yards in game one back. So, but I'll be nice to Minnesota for once. I'll say trending upwards.
Okay, Jared, let me stick with you here. Feel good story because New York football, as of right now, is looking good. It's looking good. Giants are 4-1, Jets are 3-2. Obviously, I think the Jets have a tougher division, but I mean, look, I don't want to take anything away from both these teams, you know. And for all these people that saying, "Oh, look, the Jets won with Skylar Thompson and who did they win? Who did they win with last week?"
Oh, Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett being the other
Yeah,
quarterbacks.
I'm like, no, we have to play with Joe Flacco for 3 games. I don't want to hear it. Jets are 3-2. Eat my ass. But Jurg, look, I'm not saying go far into the playoffs. Should we believe in these New York teams? And look, I know we're gonna be nice because this isn't a bait question for you to be negative towards them. I'm just saying, how much do you believe in these New York teams?
Look, I want to believe in these teams. Look, they've done God's work this season. The Giants beat the Titans and the Jets beat the Steelers. You think I want to speak ill about either of these teams? I'm happy that they did that for me. Look, the Giants are 4-1, and again, maybe this is just circumstantial, but you look at what the rest of their season is. I mean, granted, this Baltimore game coming up for them is tough, but they got the Jaguars after that. The Jaguars are kind of 50-50. They face the Seahawks. I don't know about the Seahawks. That's future Ring of Honor Seattle Seahawk Geno Smith leading the way over there. So I don't know about that. But then it's the Texans, it's the Lions who can't stop a nosebleed. The Commanders suck this season, and Daniel Jones, for the most part, has been like, he's only lost once to the Commanders in his career or something like that. The toughest games remaining on their schedule, there are 2 games against the Eagles, their game against the Vikings, and this Ravens game coming up. If you tell me they're only going to, on paper, definitively lose 4 more times this season, they're making the playoffs. And it, I can only look at the schedule and definitively say I'm expecting them to lose 4. Well, I guess the Cowboys game. Okay, 5 more times. That makes them 11-6. That's a playoff team. Now, do I expect them to finish 11-6? No, but the Giants. This is the most amount of hope they've had since their second Super Bowl win. Even more so when they made the playoffs that one time. I think it was 2016, and then Aaron Rodgers just crushed their dreams because he finished that first half of like a not a Hail Mary, but like a 40-yard touchdown to Randall Cobb or something like that, which was ironically the last time Randall Cobb was good. Yeah, no, the Giants deserve it, and the Jets. I said this before the season. The Jets are a team with exciting young talent. Hall and Wilson. You got Sauce Gardner on the defense. I don't think this is the Jets season to make the playoffs. I think people were trying to peg them to be like the Bengals of this season. I think that's for next season. I
I
think
think
next
it was just me and Dame, to be
I,
honest.
no. I was hearing 1 or 2 other people. I don't want to just
No.
put that on you guys. Granted, I do all my podcasts with Jets fans apparently, so maybe those are the main voices. But in all seriousness, I think 2023 is shaping up to be the year for the Jets. I think continue to progress the way you are. I think Robert Saleh is showing that maybe there might be a little bit of something that him and that team can do. And at the end of the day, just keep at it. Ignore the outside noise of people saying that you're frauds and all that. Just keep at it in that locker room. That's what matters the most. Brian Daboll and Robert Saleh have been blessings, I think, to the locker rooms of those respective franchises. And this is the first time in over a decade that both New York teams are above 500 at some point in the regular season. Like that in and of itself is a win. I'm not going to speak ill of either of these teams. They're doing great right now. And when New York, we say this in every single sport, when New York is doing good in the 4 major sports, the sports are doing good. The problem is sometimes the New York teams go against themselves in doing good. This is the first time in a while we can't say that about the Jets and the Giants. So,
That is true. That is
there you
true. Dame, as a fellow Jets fan, let me ask you this. Obviously, the same question, but they play the Packers next. Packers have been a little wonky, and then after that, they got the Broncos. I think the Broncos that's a winnable game for the Jets. If the Jets pull off an upset against the Packers and win against the Broncos, that'll lead them at what, 5-2? How are we feeling after that? On top of what you think so far.
Well, I'm going to be realistic. I am super excited about the Jets and how they've been playing, from Zach Wilson, Garrett Wilson, Quinn Williams, Tucker, Hall, Elijah Moore, all these guys. I could go on and on and on. They've been really exciting, and they've showed potential of what they can possibly be moving forward. However, obviously, I'm not going to go as far as to say they're ready yet or they're a true contender. Can they make the playoffs? Yes. Do I expect them to make the playoffs? No. Of course, they're in the playoff seed now, but I think as the season goes on, other teams will be
will wake up,
better.
yeah.
Teams will wake up. The Jets will basically maybe stay the same. Maybe show even more potential here and there, but at the end of the day, I think there'll be a 7-win team, something like that around there, and I just don't think that'll be enough to make the playoffs. I think they'll be in the bubble of making the playoffs all the way until the end, and then they'll just miss it. I think next year will be the year they maybe take that step forward. But as long as I'm seeing drives here and there of all these playmakers making things happen and the potential that the team has, as long as I'm seeing that game to game and they're able to maybe sometimes put it from quarter 1 to quarter 4, I'm happy. I'm okay with that. I'm not expecting anything more. As long as I see a future, see a light at the end of the tunnel, I'm okay with that. But yeah, I just don't expect them to really be a true contender or anything like that. I don't really expect them to make the playoffs. If they do, that's great. I'm not in my tanking mode that I've been for the past 10 years. I do think they have all the cornerstones that they need. They probably need, obviously, another tackle, but you could do that from the 15 spot or something like that, or you could just always move up. I'm okay with not having one of the top picks this year because I think they have their cornerstones at the most important positions. They have their playmakers on offense. They have guys at the cornerback position. They have guys on defensive line and all that, and obviously Zach Wilson. As for the Giants, though, they're obviously 4-1, and all Giants fans think they're going to the Super Bowl. They think this is going to be another 2012, 2007 kind of deal where they're going to sneak in as a wild card and win the
Give him
Super
a
Bowl.
break, Dame. Come on.
I just don't get it. I mean, they've all be bad teams. Daniel Jones looks okay. Doesn't look good. He doesn't look great. I guess you just be happy he doesn't look bad as he used to be. But, I mean, Brian Daboll is just a great head coach. He should be a Jet. Still, it'll just get me mad that he's a Giant instead of a Jet. I think Jets would be a lot better now with Brian Daboll instead of Robert Saleh, but it is what it is. This team has literally no playmakers on the outside. It's just Saquon Barkley. They're eventually going to have to pay him. Defense looks good, but then again, they've played literally no good offenses. And I guess Aaron Rodgers, you could say they played good against him, but I think it's more to say about Aaron Rodgers just kind of choking than it is about the Giants defense. But yeah, I mean, I think Giants fans have their expectations way too high. Their expectations should be leveled with the Jets. Just be happy that your team is showing a little bit of potential here and there, but just don't expect to make the playoffs. I think they're the third best team in that division behind the Cowboys and the Eagles, and that just isn't going to be able to get you into the playoffs, I think. So I'm happy for both teams. It's good, of course, like you guys said, it's good that New York is good at something because you don't see that much a lot the past few years, but I think all New York fans should kind of level their expectations.
Dame, I'm gonna stick with you. How do we feel about the Cowboys? 4-1, no Dak. It's been all Cooper Rush. Um, they got the Eagles next. Spoiler alert: we think they're gonna lose to the Eagles. But how do we feel about them so far, and how do we feel about them going forward?
Look, the Cowboys have been impressive. There's literally no way to go around it. When Dak went out, you've had Cowboy fans, one of our friends, just be ready for the tank. And a lot of people thought they were just going to get a high draft pick. Like, this is over for the season. He's going to be out a few weeks. And by the time he came back, they're going to be out of it. But, I mean, At 4-1 here with Cooper Rush as your quarterback, it doesn't matter what bad teams you're playing. When people saw that Cooper Rush is going to be a starter, they kind of view the Cowboys as that bad team on people's schedules that they're kind of going to roll over. But here they are. Their defense is playing absolutely amazing. Arguably the best defense in the league. I mean, there's not much more to say about Micah Parsons. He's arguably a top 5 defender in the entire football league. Obviously, Cooper Rush has done an amazing job filling in for Dak. You see little whispers here and there of if he should stay as a starter over Dak, but I mean that's just silly. That's kind of like when the Jets had that QB controversy with Mike White. I mean that was just absolutely ridiculous. I'm not sure when Dak's coming back. It might be next week. I think they're probably going to get they're probably going to lose against the Eagles this week. And I think that's when they'll be like, all right, like we're ready for Dak to come back. They probably just didn't want to bring Dak back against the Eagles. I think they play the Lions next week. So that's a pretty easy matchup to kind of ease Dak into it. One of the worst defenses, if not the worst defense in the league. But I mean, it's just impressive what they're doing. Clearly, we didn't expect this. We picked them to lose every single week. But I think this is the week we're finally right about it. I just think the Eagles are just much more superior. Clearly, their offense is a lot better than we expected. Their defense, although they were great last year and they took a really big step, a lot of us didn't expect them to kind of repeat that. We kind of thought it was a one-year kind of thing. But, I mean, you could argue that they've been better than they were last year, honestly. So, I'm really impressed with the Cowboys. I did not expect this. And I think I wouldn't really say this game is a real big test because they don't have Dak as their quarterback. But their next game against the Eagles, when Dak is hopefully back and fully healthy, I'm going to be really excited to see that game.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Just light correction, Chris. As we know, he is now Cooper Cush on this podcast. The fact that the Cowboys are undefeated with Cooper on that good Cush rush is very impressive to say the least. And they're all, like Dame alluded to, it's all in that defense. It's Michael Parsons being a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. It was DeMarcus Lawrence with his pass rushing skill. It's the front seven overall in this team stepping up. And it's the defensive backcourt of this team. I think the safety tandem there's with J-Ron Curse. I think Wilson is the other one. Combined with the fact that Diggs has just improved as a corner, I don't think he's been getting beat as much this season as he was last year. The interception numbers might not be the same, but I think with corners, it's not about interception numbers. It's about, are you blanking your assignments? And I think Diggs has done that to a better job this year than what he was doing last year, even with less interceptions, which that should be telling. It will be interesting to see when Dak gets back and if he can get that chemistry going. I'm just thoroughly impressed by Dallas. I think this defense is, like Dame said, top 5 in the league. I think we mentioned them briefly earlier on. They're supremely talented. And yeah, we've picked against them a lot. Maybe in hindsight 2020, you probably shouldn't have gone against the legend in Cooper Rush, Cush himself. But, that's sometimes how it goes. The NFC East is just proving us wrong. Like, this is the division to get proved wrong. Like, we thought the AFC West was the division of death. No, boys. That is the NFC East this season, from the joke division to the death division. What a glow up. What a turnaround for the NFC East as a whole. But yeah, Cowboys, thoroughly impressed. This Eagles game is a big one. If they could actually be the team that blemishes the Eagles, I think we really need to start looking at the Cowboys as, like, I know Cowboys fans say it every single season, but for the first legitimate time in a while, like an actual contender to make some noise in the playoffs. Especially, I think, if they get the first seed. I think if the road has to go through Dallas, as long as it's not Aaron Rodgers on the other side, because apparently he can just always win in Dallas no matter the situation. Cowboys giving themselves a good opportunity to make big noise, and I think that's big for that core. I'm not going to say the organization. Like I say, I think that's big for the core. I think that's big for the coaching staff. I think this had the makings of some people to be an underlying make or break season for some of the people in that team, and they're making it right now. So let's see how long it'll take for them to break.
Jurg, let me stick with you. I got 2 more. Take into account the injuries to Emmanuel Mosley and Jimmy Ward. I think Emmanuel Mosley's out for the season. Jimmy Ward broke his hand, but I am reading that he might come back later in the season. So I don't think they've ruled him out for the season just yet. Are we buying the 49ers as contenders?
For the playoffs, yeah, I think the 49ers are a playoff
How about
contender.
to make it interesting, Super Bowl contenders?
See, it's so hard to say because the NFC is pretty wide open.
I know. Exactly, yeah.
But the problem is that the Chiefs, I think, would beat them. God, who are the other top teams in the AFC right now? The Bills could beat them. The AFC was leading it. Well, no,
Bills are AFC.
No, I'm trying to think of all the AFC division leaders right now. I think any of the division leaders, bar the Tennessee Titans, would beat the San Francisco 49ers because go San Fran over Tennessee all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
I think Super Bowl contenders? No, I don't think so. Because in part, Nick Bosa, I think, was injured and he's going to miss a little bit of time. And it's actually proven that like Nick Bosa is like we can think what we want, Chris, about him, but Nick Bosa means a lot to that team on the
Oh, for
field with the
sure, for
impact
sure.
he makes.
That defense is absurd.
Yeah,
The Niners defense, yeah.
yeah, and having these injuries, like I feel like it'll just take them back a step in the regular season. Come the playoffs, if they're not healthy, but if they're playing, they're playing. And they might make another run at the NFC Championship. No, I don't think they're real contenders. I think I need to see more of them, especially because I think the offense hasn't reached its full potential yet. If maybe the 49ers offense can take that next step, then I would reconsider it. That's a Super Bowl winning caliber defense, but I just don't think they're there yet. 5 games in, need a lot more from them. So Super Bowl contender, no. Playoff contender, oh yeah.
So, kind of briefly mentioned this when I talked about the Rams, but it's hard for me to really see the Niners as a contender with Jimmy G. Preseason, we all talked about the potential they had, and I really thought the best team to beat the Rams was the Niners because of how well they played them in years past and the potential of Trey Lance. But with Jimmy G, you kind of just know what they are. I feel like he's been worse this year than he's been the couple years past. I don't know how. I feel like maybe he's mentally checked out or something like that, because he knows he's not going to be there next year. And the only reason he's starting is because of a devastating injury to Trey Lance. But obviously, the defense is taking injury hits, and I feel like this team is always injured every single year. It kind of doesn't make sense to me. Um, funny. I feel like their injury started after they played the Jets in MetLife, and feel like everyone was blaming the turf. And then since then, they just had crazy injury history. But I mean, I just feel like no matter what the injuries they have on that defense, they're still always going to make it work. I just don't know what it is. I feel like they lose playmakers each and every offseason, and they still just bring in new guys like the safety. I can't even say his name, but he looks like Chur Palamalu, whatever it is. But I mean, the guy's a star this year, and he came out of nowhere. Nick Bosa's just Nick Bosa. They always will have linebackers in and out, cornerbacks in and out. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to the quarterback playing. Just hasn't been enough. Their running game is always going to be good. It's just like their defense. They'll lose guys. Guys will go down. They'll just bring someone else in, and Kyle Shanahan will scheme a way to use their strengths and make them have a strong running game one way or another. Something that's disappointing has been George Kittle this year. I don't know what's happened to him. He's playing more like an offensive lineman than a tight end.
He is, man.
Like, it just doesn't make sense. I get it. They lost Trent Williams, and maybe part of it is that they're kind of using him to help that loss. But at the end of the day, you got to use George Kittle for what he is. He's one of the best receiving tight ends in the league. Some people used to argue that he's better than Travis Kelce. He's the best in the league. So you kind of got to use him as that. And that will definitely, obviously, help boost Jimmy Garoppolo's play, as well as the running game and the receivers and all that. So I think his team definitely has a lot of work to do. But at the end of the day, I just can't count them out because I've seen how dangerous they can be going into the playoffs.
But Dame, does the loss of their two corners scare you for them?
No, because like I mentioned, I feel like they lose guys every offseason. They lost Richard Sherman a couple years ago, and they just lose guys each and every offseason. I feel like the next guy up just makes it work. D'Amico Ryans, the defensive coordinator, has been absolutely amazing at what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like same thing with the defensive coordinators. You just lose one and just gain another. I don't know what it is. It's just a great run organization, great run coaching staff. They have a great coaching tree there. And they just make sure that when they lose somebody, they have the next guy up ready to go and fill in that spot. So I'm not really too concerned because I've just seen them rotate guys and make it work.
If D'Amico Ryans doesn't get a head coaching interview or two next offseason, that'll be a travesty because, like Dame said, he's absolutely outstanding. Like, if there's one thing you can count on in that team, it's he's able to get that defensive back crew to overperform, which is, like, not easy to do.
Well, there's already one head coaching job that's open for him. And you know what? That's a great segue because this is my last question regarding them. Dame, let me stick with you since we ended off with you. Will the Carolina Panthers be sellers soon?
It's going to be hard for me to see that because their owner, I know, is known for just being a guy that's kind of impatient and he just wants to win. He wants to do whatever he can to win now and bring out a contender. He doesn't want to have a losing team. He wants to bring fans in, make money, but I personally feel like they should just sell. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw, but they have 4 draft picks this draft. They have the 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th. Like, in 7 rounds as a rebuilding team, you should have a lot more than 4 picks. Like, I obviously they lost some to Sam Darnold. I forgot where else all these other draft picks went, but irregardless, like, you can't have 4 draft picks as a rebuilding team with no quarterback and really nothing. So they have guys, just to name them. They have Burns, Brian Burns, edge rusher, absolute stud. Derek Brown, the nose tackle, absolute stud. You have DJ Moore, stud wide receiver. You kind of mentioned him going to the Packers, maybe. He's young and he's on a pretty good deal. I think he's $20 million a year. It's pretty good. Christian McCaffrey, obviously that's their big star piece, but it's going to be hard to trade him because of the contract he's on. People don't want to pay running back that much money. They have a couple other pieces on their defense as well, but those three from Burns, Derek Brown, and DJ Moore, I think those are the main pieces that they can move. And I think they could get a lot of value for that. I think Brian Burns, they could absolutely get a number one for. Every team, no matter how good you are, is always looking for an edge rusher. You can't ever have enough guys to rush a quarterback. So I think they could definitely get a one from that. They could probably get a two, maybe a one for Derek Brown. He's super young. I think he's still on his rookie deal, maybe a year or two until he has to get paid. You could probably get a one or a two for him too. And DJ Moore, you could absolutely get a number two for as well. You could probably get multiple picks for all these guys if you don't want to really go that high draft pick route. You definitely get multiple picks for all these guys. And I think that's the route they should go because when you're a rebuilding team, you just need as many draft picks as possible to fill all these holes and give young guys a shot. And especially a team that needs a quarterback. I mean, I guess they might be bad enough to draft one, but if you're not, you're gonna need those draft picks to either move up, or if you do draft high enough with your own pick, you need to be able to put players around that quarterback to be successful. So I think they should absolutely go full out, full blown sell. And I think if they could get rid of McCaffrey for really anything, they could save the money and get the draft picks. I think that would be great as well.
Now, before we move on to Jurg, Dame, real quick, if they were to trade one of their star pieces, and because you're right, the McCaffrey thing's a little tricky because of the money he makes. Realistically, in your mind, which piece? I mean, who do you think would get traded most likely first? Like, say they only make one move, who do you think would get traded?
Ooh, that's tough because
That's what I'm here
oh,
for, man.
wow, I know.
Because
I
I was
think
thinking about it, right? Because my bad, I was thinking about
no,
it. It's like I would love the Chiefs to get DJ Moore, right? DJ Moore, like you see his like name in offers, I mean, in trade packages and in trade proposals. He's 25 years old. Like realistically, it doesn't make sense to trade him, right? But I mean, if he's not vibing with the organization and like Baker Mayfield kind of sucks ass, and he wants out, I mean, are they kind of back into a corner? Like, well, yeah. What do you think would happen? Who do you think is the guy to go if they were to trade at least one person?
well, first to mention, if DJ Moore goes to the Chiefs, I mean that might just break the league. With the way
Mm-hmm.
the Chiefs run their offense and the way DJ Moore is so great in space, he might. I don't know. I just don't even want to think about how great that offense could be. However, I do get the point that you might not move DJ Moore because he is so young and he's on a pretty good contract. He's not one of these receivers that are getting paid $25+ million a year. He's not aging. And when you do bring a new quarterback, you do want to have weapons to give him to not really have him in a Justin Fields situation or Zach Wilson situation last year or anything like that. You want to be able to give him some kind of pieces to kind of grow. You don't want his number one receiver be Robbie Anderson. So I get keeping DJ Moore. That's why if I had to pick one, I'd go with one of the defensive guys. I'd go with Brian Burns if I had to just pick one, just because he is an edge rusher instead of a nose tackle. I feel like edge rushers are so much more valuable. They're kind of like the left tackle, of the offensive line. Any team can need them, no matter like even the Chargers with Bosa and Khalil Mack. You see Bosa's out now; they could use another guy. The Chiefs obviously could use one. The Packers could use one. The Bills could use another pass rush. Imagine putting Brian Burns in across from Von Miller.
I don't want
Like
to think about that.
like all these contending teams and the bad teams, teams like the Jets or the Giants could use another edge rusher, a young edge rusher. This guy's young; he's still not in his prime, and he's just an absolute beast. So I think if I had to just pick one, I'd go with Brian Burns because of how valuable his position is, and just because I'm always in favor of making sure that your young quarterback that you draft has weapons to be successful, and you have a team around him. So that's why I think you'd have to lean to keeping DJ Moore over the defense.
So with the Panthers, your original question was, should they rebuild, Chris?
Do you think they're going to be sellers going forward this season?
Copy.
Which I guess is this. Yeah, yeah, same
Right.
question. I guess.
No, all good. I just want to make sure. So should they be sellers? I think they will be. I know Tepper is kind of we've labeled him as the impatient owner and all that, but I think firing Matt Rule was the first sign of humbling him. I think Tepper is going to learn really quickly what it really takes to win in the NFL and sports in general. And you can try to have the schemes of grandeur and all that you're going to do something really big. But at the end of the day, I think this is a reality. He made this big investment into Matt Rule, and it completely flopped. The assets to trade for Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, they've completely flopped. Signing Teddy Bridgewater, even though Teddy, I don't think it's really at fault for him. Like, they just gave up on him way so quickly. It's all flopped. I think this could potentially be the sign that he kind of needs to be humbled. And how do you get humbled? You just go fully into a rebuild. It's rough because NFL teams don't necessarily tank. They just end up bad. Like, teams aren't willingly trading away piece after piece after piece.
That's a good way of putting it, Jurg. I never thought about that. Smart and smart.
Yeah, like teams just don't really take. Like, unless you're the Stephen Ross Dolphins a couple of years ago and Brian Flores, said F you to that scheme. That scumbag over there in Miami. But aside from that, like, teams don't necessarily. It's not like in the NHL. Like I said, the Coyotes and the Blackhawks are deliberately tanking this season. In the NBA, everyone and their mother is going to tank for Big Vic for this next draft. Like, in MLB, like teams like the Astros and the Cubs, they tanked on purpose to get their core. NFL is kind of the sport where it doesn't happen, so I don't think they can. Like, if it happens, this will be the first legitimate time. Like, I think it would be obvious. Like, I know the Dolphins is kind of obvious, but they still had a couple decent players that they did eventually trade. To be fair, I think here, if you trade Run CMC, if you trade DJ Moore, if you trade Brian Burdens,
Wait, Jurg. Did you come up with that yourself?
No. This is a nickname I've seen for Christian McCaffrey.
Wow, I was about to say, bro, that's a phenomenal nickname. All right,
I wish.
Bro, there's so many fantasy names that have Run CMC as their name. Are you like?
I don't do
dumb?
fantasy, bro. I'm not.
Pretty sure Manny had that as his name last year or something. Like
I
that.
promise you, he didn't.
Okay. Anyways, but yeah, like if they trade those, and even like it would be weird to trade Derek Brown and Jeremy Chin because they're like Dame said, they're not even finished with their rookie deals. But if you could get that extra value, like, do you just say screw it and completely tear down this roster? Like, it depends because, like Dame said, they only have a couple picks this year, but because they have their first, I think this would be a different conversation if they didn't have their first round pick. But because they still have their first round pick, do you take the chance and look for the real franchise quarterback this year? And do you pair your coach and your quarterback, which they kind of haven't necessarily done? Like Matt Rule, it's been a revolving door of like, okay, I could do it with this quarterback. No, I could do it with this quarterback. No, I could do it with this quarterback. He's a schmuck. And he fired Joe Brady. But can Matt Rule, can the eventual new head coach hire next offseason, if they can sell them on a vision, I could see them maybe not necessarily tanking, but could they sell off a piece or two? Yes, but like Dame said, like, I will not condemn any quarterback to having Robbie Anderson as their number one receiver. And at that point, I would make Terrace Marshall Jr. my number one receiver over Robbie Anderson, which Terrace Marshall Jr., talented guy. And even they have Laviska Shenault. Actually, you know what? Yeah, sure. Trade DJ Moore. You still have Laviska Shenault. You still have Terrace Marshall Jr. I know DJ Moore's a number one, but if he could get you like a first back potentially, maybe I'm overvaluing, maybe not, because I think he signed his extension. If you could get a first back for DJ Moore, maybe like a first and a fourth for first and third, I'd do it because you need the draft pick capital. You still have a chance to get your quarterback of the future. Yeah, I would do it. To your second question to him, who would I trade between Christian or who is likely to get traded? It's tough because between the Chiefs and the Packers are notoriously stingy for not helping Aaron Rodgers. And I think the thing with the Chiefs is they still need to work out Orlando Brown Jr.'s contract extension. And I think bringing in DJ Moore right now wouldn't necessarily help with that situation because I think the Chiefs have learned their lesson. I think they need to keep the offensive line as good as possible. And like I said, the Packers are just stupid. Whereas Christian McCaffrey, yes, the contract is big, but guys get restructured deals all the time. I can see a situation where a team that needs a little bit more balance in the offense trades for Christian McCaffrey and kind of restructures the deal, not to take away his money, but to convert it into signing bonus. That's a very popular thing. I don't know if they could do that midseason with the current year, but maybe because I think he still has 1 or 2 more years left on this extension, they could maybe do that. I could see that the Bills need it. There have been a lot of Bills and Christian McCaffrey rumors recently. I think
Can that realistically happen?
I think so.
Okay.
I think they might be able to do it. This is someone who hasn't looked at the NFL salary cap. Let me be fair, but I'm just going to assume if there's ashes, there should be smoke. So I think maybe that could be the case. I think Christian McCaffrey going to a couple different teams. Christian McCaffrey to San Francisco would be something to say the very
Lord
least.
Jesus.
Yeah, you see what Kyle Shanahan is doing with Jeff Wilson and Elijah Mitchell. What can he do if Christian McCaffrey can actually stay upright? Now, the big if is, can he stay healthy? Which, I mean, to be fair to Christian McCaffrey, like this has been the healthiest season he's had in a couple of years. So, like, it's tough. I'm actually going to be counteractive or counterintuitive. No, that's what the hell am I trying? Devil's advocate. Jesus Christ. I'm going to say actually Christian McCaffrey would be more likely to be traded between him and DJ Moore, because I think the teams that we're listing right now for Moore are need to be a little bit more cognizant of their draft capital for the Packers, which they always will be, and the Chiefs for their other positions of need. Whereas I think with McCaffrey, I think a team or two would be willing to take him on and would find a way to make it work, a la Bills and 49ers. And I think those two organizations are like, they have more willingness to do that because I think they see their windows as now. I think the Packers have wasted Aaron Rodgers' entire career. What's a couple more seasons to them? And I know the Chiefs love making the moves, but again, Orlando Brown Jr., if his contract is not locked in, I don't think DJ Moore, like, it'd be a great move, but I just don't think that would be the move. You need to secure. I love the number one receiver for Mahomes. I need my left tackle for him before I go after my new number one receiver. That's just me personally. So I think that's the case there when it comes to the Carolina Panthers. But I mean, we can at least say this: Matt Rule is no longer your head coach. Hallelujah.
True. The thing I would counter to that claim about like DJ Moore to like the Chiefs, Jurg, since you're against it, I'm not you're against it, but like that you would prefer other moves before that. I still think the Chiefs, for as good as they are, and Mahomes, for as good as he is, can make something out of nothing. I do still think they need that like number one guy. Like I know it's Kelsey, right? But like Dame said, like DJ Moore can create so much space for himself. I still think they need that number one receiver. And while I do think not having Tyreek Hill helps, like I think it makes Mahomes like actually not just he actually like surveys the offense.
Yeah.
Like it's not just like fuck it, I'm just gonna give it to Tyreek, right, and just hope for the best because he can catch whatever and he could run for however long he can because he's that fast. They do need that number one. I think if they want to, because right now I do think the Bills are above them as of right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you want to beat the Bills, you have to get a DJ Moore. OBJ, I know OBJ's out there, but I don't know how OBJ is going to be like. I feel like a DJ Moore would catapult them into favorites. That's just me.
I don't blame you. No, look, here's what I'm saying. If you can still find a way to keep Orlando Brown Jr. and get DJ Moore, do it in a heartbeat. There's no question.
That's
But
where the Dolphins the picks come into play.
Well, no. I'm not saying they can't get DJ Moore. I'm saying you
Oh
need
yeah,
to
like a
get
Ford.
Orlando Brown Jr. locked into that deal. I'm saying the salary cap gymnastics that they have to go through to make that happen. I'm not talking about the trade. I know they can make the trade, but the rest of it, I think, is what needs to happen in terms of Orlando Brown Jr. for me. Look, we already saw what happened if the Kansas City Chiefs don't have a healthy offensive line deep in the postseason. They choked in the second half against the Bengals, and they got slaughtered by the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl. Like, that was because the opposing team's pass rush took it to a next level. And Tyreek Hill was there. And if I could swap out Tyreek Hill for a Hall of Fame left tackle in those games, I don't know. At least that Bengals game, I think the Chiefs this year could probably go to the Super Bowl over last year's Chiefs team, in all seriousness, because the offensive line would be healthier and better. So, like, that's just me. I'm not disagreeing with the number one receiver point, but right now I think securing left tackle should be the number one thing first and foremost. That's just me. Look, I'm all for receivers going to new places and balling out. I'm all for that.
Especially with Mahomes. That would be fun to watch. We move on to our next segment, the Clowns and Crowns segment. Jurg, if you can, please explain to our great audience what the segment is.
Guys, this has become my favorite segment of the show on a weekly basis because we just get to dunk on people when it comes to the clowns. But Crowns and Clowns is essentially on a weekly basis, me, Chris, and Dame, we scour what was the previous week in the NFL. We go after the top performers, and we love to give them a crown for top performances. It could be anyone from a coach changing things to a specific team, just all around performance, to a player that shined brighter than most. And then, of course, we have the clowns, who it could be a player that royally screwed up, a coach that is just an incompetent buffoon, a general manager that's doing stupid things, a certain network provider that paid $1 billion for a certain day of the week for NFL games that have underperformed, to say the least, this season. It could be a myriad of different factors overall when it comes to our crowns and clowns. I've said this. I think I said this before, but if I have not, I'll say it for the first time. Crowns and Clowns is rated E for everyone. Everyone can get this scathing criticism. So let's get to it.
For sure. Do we want to start off with the clowns or crowns?
I think we always start with the crowns. So
Okay, Jerry, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So my crown of the week for this past week in the NFL, I got to give him credit. I'm going to go with Austin Eckler. My big criticism with the Chargers when they fell to 1-2 was the fact that the running game was completely ineffective. They were the running game as a whole was averaging less than like 3 yards per carry, and Austin Eckler clearly took that personal, and he went off against the Cleveland Browns. Big reason that they won that game was because of him. He had 2 total touchdowns, and he had 26 receiving yards, decent, but 173 rushing yards. I'm pretty sure he doubled his season production just off of that game alone. I need to give Austin Eckler credit there because we had questions. Well, not this whole podcast. One person in particular had questions about the Chargers after their 1-2 start. Had questions about them after their 1-2 start. And someone even said that the Texans should potentially win that game last week. I don't know, going
Fucking
into it.
guy, bro.
So the Chargers, it was big for them to go 2-0, and Austin Eckler was the massive reason that they won against a decent Browns team this week. So my crown, 173 rushing yards, which I think is the most anyone has done in a game so far this season. Austin Eckler.
All right. Okay, I'll go next. My crown of the week goes to the New York Giants. They upset the Green Bay Packers. Look, I'll say this, man. The Giants are fun. Like, I know they're 4-1, and a lot of people are still writing them off and think they're going to collapse eventually and still not make the playoffs, like Dame kind of like alluded to before. But I gotta say, man, these dudes are playing really hard, and I love Brian Daboll. Jones, I think, isn't as bad this season, and like this team is so depleted, yet they play like it's their last game of the season, right? Every game feels like that. Like that's a grit and grind team, and I gotta give them credit, man. They're actually fun to watch, and they beat Aaron Rodgers, so that's always a plus. And they did it in London, so I gotta give them bonus points for doing it internationally. So my crown of the week goes to the New York Giants. Dame, what do you got?
I'm gonna go with Micah Parsons here. I know I've personally shined the Cowboys a lot this podcast and during the weekly picks. But I mean, Micah Parsons had 2 sacks, 3 QB hits against the Rams this week. A lot of people thought this is the game that the Cowboys were gonna lose, but he's leading a defense that many expected not to be this good. And like we've mentioned before on this week's episode, they're top 5 defense in the league. And his 2 sacks adding to his season total, which is now 6. He's tied for first in the league, and that's absolutely incredible. A good bet if you want to go put it is Michael Parsons, Defensive Player of the Year, and for him to lead the league in sacks. I think that's a good value there if you want to go bet something. But my crown of the week will definitely go to Michael Parsons.
Dave, do you want to go
Yeah.
next? Do you have okay?
So my clowns of the week are going to go referees. I think the referees
Yeah.
were an absolute shit show this week in the NFL. Starting with the Tom Brady roughing the passer call to ending with the Chiefs roughing the passer call. I think those are the 2 worst calls I've ever seen ever. The Tom Brady one, I mean, the guy barely hit him, and I guess just because they were going to give the Falcons a chance to win the game, you got to call roughing the passer to help Tom Brady save his day and stuff because he just doesn't look good. So it can't be him just not being good. It had to be something wrong with the defense or something like that. Whatever. And the Chiefs one, I mean, Chris Jones literally had the ball in his hand and then fell on Derek Carr. Like, that just makes no sense to me. Before they both even hit the ground and when they barely made contact with each other, Chris Jones had full possession of the ball. He took the ball out of Derek Carr's hands and then just fell on him. That's a tackle for Derek Carr in the stats. And yet they called a roughing the passer on Chris Jones. It just made no sense. And I think the refs were absolutely the clowns of the week for shit show performances throughout all the games this week.
Okay. That was gonna pick the refs too, but I'll let you have that. Jurg, let me go next. Give you a little breather. My clown of the week, and you know what? It would have been easy for me to kind of go Russell Wilson and the Broncos, but I'm gonna go with Josh McDaniels for this one because of his decision to go for the 2-point conversion when they could have easily just tied it up against the Chiefs. I mean, come on, guys, just tie it up, and then you trust your defense because Max Crosby was having himself a game, and then it would be stress-free going into the last drive, right? And then you just get yourselves a field goal position. Adams had a sick catch off. Like, obviously, you kind of trust the connection between Carr and Adams to get you in field goal range. I would have just tied it. I don't know. The 2-point conversion thing just boggled my mind. Like, I get it. You want to go for the win, but come on, bro. I don't know. Just play it safe. Just play it safe. And I just feel like you can't take that risk if you're the Raiders because you're 1-3, right? So that's my takeaway. My clown of the week goes to Josh McDaniels for that decision. Jared, go ahead.
Yeah, you left me a bit of a venue here, but I'm going to take it even a step further. And my clowns of the week are the NFL schedule makers. Why the actual hell are the first 6 weeks of the season the Denver Broncos have 4 primetime games? Why? Why have you done this to us? Like, I know the easy thing would be, oh, Jurg in the preseason, we thought they would be better, and Russ Wilson, let Russ cook. Russell Wilson, I wouldn't want him to be a short order cook at my local diner, with how the Broncos have looked.
Jesus.
It's been so bad. Week 1, they were the last game of week 1, right? They were Monday Night Football. Week 3, they were Sunday Night Football in that atrocious game against the San Francisco 49ers. This week, this past week, week 4, or no, excuse me, my bad. Week 5, they were Thursday Night Football. And in week 6, guess what they are? They're Monday Night Football. Why do I have to see, even before they were underperforming, you're going to make me see Russell Wilson in 4 primetime games in the first 6 weeks? Do you want me to not be a part of NFL discussion on this podcast anymore, Shield? What the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing? It's so bad. It's so bad. It's just terrible schedule making. And, I mentioned in there, like, the Thursday Night Football game just needs no more discussion. We just never need to mention it ever again. And the NFL schedule makers are the reason for that. They come up with these. We literally said before the season, we thought this would be a better slate of Thursday night games before the season. Oh, how wrong we were. It's been bad. Aside from Chargers Chiefs, it's been bad. If it's not a terrible game, it's a quarterback getting their head knocked in and with concussions. That's essentially what Thursday Night Football has been. Aside from Chargers Chiefs, terrible. NFL schedule makers, clowns of the week. Yeah.
Well, Jurg, to make you feel any better, we got the Bears Commanders tonight.
Early night sleep. Hang out with your families, hang out with your girlfriends, use this excuse.
Or listen to this podcast.
It won't be out, dumbass.
Well, then listen to our other podcast episodes.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. What a week this week. What a week. I think we'll wrap it up with that. Jurg, where can they find us on the socials?
As you already know, you can follow us at SomewhatSports on Instagram to get constant updates. We have our weekly NFL predictions, of course. We at the time that everyone's going to be listening to this, if you do follow us on IG, you have seen the first summary post of Crowns and Clowns lumped in with our predictions for this upcoming week. We're going to be doing this every 4 or 5 weeks or so. We're going to give you a summary of the Crowns and Clowns that we have named so far this season, so you can get a little bit of a tally of who have we called the best of the best so far, and who has been the stoogiest of the stoogiest for the 2022 season as a whole. And of course, eventually, it'll either be up or will have already been up if you follow us on IG, which we are 1 follower away from 100. Thank you guys so much. We're 1 follower away. Let's get to 100 and let's just keep flying from there, guys. It's been a long road, and we're really hyped to be able to get this close. One more. We're asking for one more, like Christian Cage for the World Heavyweight Championship. Just one more. Follower, not match this time. But yes, we'll also be having betting picks throughout this NFL season. Maybe a little bit of baseball picks. I'm not sure if it's going to be other sports, but at least with football, Fahad's for Godfather picks will be a weekly occurrence on the Somewhat Sports IG, and the only way you're going to get those is on Instagram, so make sure you follow if you want to try and make a little bit of money. And of course, if you're listening to us, that means you're listening to us either on Spotify or on YouTube. It's somewhat Spaced in Sports. Like Chris said, when it's just bad football, like Tom Brady so eloquently put it, that there's just a lot of bad football, and you don't want to waste your time on Thursday night football games, just pop in, listen to last week's episode, and just let it go, baby. Let it go. That's the best thing to do. When bad football gives you the ills, the Somewhat Sports Podcast is here to give you the thrills.
Wow. You just one up yourself every week, Jurg. Beautifully put, as always. Can never top that. Jurg and Dave, phenomenal job as always. I appreciate you, fellas. To all the listeners listening, if you made it this far, we also appreciate you. And until next time, peace.
Peace.